Welcome to the Embassy of Sweden's new seminar series, Rethink Tomorrow, which brings together creators, thinkers, and experts to discuss critical global issues, from equality to sustainability to democracy, and explore creative ways to build a better future.
Hi. Thank you for joining us today for what promises to be a terrific discussion. I always like to ask folks before we begin to drop in the chat where you're watching from. So please feel free to do that now. My name is Joe Newman, and I'm the founder and president of Focus on the Story, a nonprofit organization based here in Washington, D.C. We organize the annual Focus on the Story International Photo Festival, which is a month-long celebration of photography in the nation's capital, and of which this talk is part of. Now, the idea behind the festival is for it to be a celebration of the city's very talented and diverse community of photographers and photography lovers. We also love shining a spotlight on some of the world's most talented visual storytellers. And while my group organizes the festival, it could not happen without the support of wonderful partners, such as our friends here at the Swedish Embassy. I want to thank them for being such terrific collaborators and all the support they've given us this year. Our mission at Focus on the Story is to support diverse, impactful visual storytelling that shines a light on critical issues, bridges cultural gaps, and sparks social change. Today's talk with Helene Schmitz cannot be more in line with that mission. There is no more critical issue in the world today than climate change. Helene's work, and it really is beautiful and thought-provoking, draws attention to the challenges that climate change poses with an impact that words cannot match. So it's fitting that today's discussion will explore the power of images to influence the global conversation on climate change. I'm truly grateful for Helene's efforts and the Swedish Embassy for giving us this platform. Now, before I turn it back to Helene, we're going to see a short video that was created for the Museum of Photography in Tallinn, Estonia, and it highlights Helene's work. Thank you very much.
Än så länge ring bara. Wow, oj. Jag trodde det var en pytteliten sten. Då är vi här. Jag är intresserad av hur vi har sett på, betraktat, utforskat, sorterat och sen exploaterat naturen och andra levande varelser. Den här sköra balansen mellan människa och natur är någonting som jag har hållit på med mycket. Här är så märkligt hur marken är. Här ser man verkligen som har hänt. Så. Här tror jag skulle vara fint. Jag började fotografera när jag var tonåring. Och jag tror att det mycket hade att göra med att jag hade väldigt mycket tankar om tid och förgänglighet och funderade över universum och oändlighet.
Jag säger 416 här.
Okej, men vi kör båda. När jag fotograferade så hade jag någon slags känsla av att jag kunde hålla kvar saker och ting. Att inte allting gick förlorat. Någonting som var en tanke som jag var väldigt upptagen av som tonåring. Alltså det här är så jävla fint. Det här är min första bok, Blow Up. Det här är så roligt. Det här är som man kallar för ett altarskåp. Det här är en squash. Jag har gjort om dem lite grann så att de blir som skulpturer. Att man får se på dem som för första gången. Sen är nästa bok, Linnaeus projekt, som handlade om Linnés sexualsystem. Där han ordnade, klassificerade alla växterna enligt ett system. Så det var utgångspunkten för mitt arbete. fotografera då, göra en bok, att gestalta hur han tänkte när han skapade sitt system. Sen har det lett mig vidare till att vi som människor betraktar de naturresurser som finns som bara objekt för vår utvinning, där vi har tagit oss den rätten. På något vis hade det ett avstamp i upplysningstiden när vetenskapsmännen började ordna, beskriva, förklara, systematisera andra levande arter. Jag har liksom på något vis zoomat ut från att börja liksom med de här extrema närbilderna, så jag har gått längre och längre ifrån. Och idag är det ju stora omvandlingar av landskap som jag mest har sysslat med. Det här är ett negativ, det här är fotograferat, det här är en av de bilderna som är med i utställningen Think Like Mountain. Och det här är ju den här Karanjokadammen uppe på nordöstra Island. Think Like Mountain, hela den utställningen började med en serie som heter The Forest. Och den serien är fotograferad i Västmanland i Sverige efter den stora skogsbranden som var 2014. Min tanke från början med The Forest var att jag skulle följa hur skogen återhämtar sig efter branden och följa under flera år. Så att jag åker kontinuerligt dit och var där senast för kanske ett halvår sedan. Men sen utvecklade sig det projektet och jag tänkte att jag skulle vilja göra någonting som handlar om naturresurser och utvinning, kolonialism, men i vår del av världen. I Sverige har jag fotograferat flera gruvor faktiskt uppe i norra Sverige. En utanför Skellefteå som är en guldgruva och sen Aitik som är norra Europas största koppargruva. Och på Island har jag fotograferat ett enormt dammbygge som heter Karanjokar. Heta källor. Jag har ju arbetat mycket med det som är förstörande i bilden. Alltså som klassisk landskapsfotograf så vill man ju kanske lyfta fram det storslagna, det överjordiskt vackra och så vidare. Men jag har jobbat med det som är störande. Till exempel i fotografierna från Island när jag har lyft fram de här pipeline med gas som går genom bilderna som blir liksom ett brott eller ett snitt eller en skada eller vad man ska säga. Har vi en halvtimme kvar? Jag vill ta en till här. Ja. Alltså jag tror inte att det blir något på grund av ljuset. Men det är liksom väldigt fint. Så. Nerpackningsdags.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Focus on the Story, for partnering with us on this event as part of the Washington D.C. Photo Month and the Focus on the Story International Photo Festival. The Embassy is thrilled to highlight the Swedish photographer Helene Schmitz's work and to display her work here at House of Sweden in Washington, D.C., down at Georgetown Harborfront. The exhibition Dreamland showcases the consequences of climate change and humans' almost total impact on our nature. By displaying Helene's photographs, the Embassy hopes to inspire discussion and debate about art, photography, and global challenges. As you hear, we have a lot of questions to talk about today, and I'm going to ask Helene a few questions. And I will open up for the audience before the end. So please have some questions prepared. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Helene Larsson Pousette, and I'm the culture counselor here at the Swedish Embassy and part of the work at the Embassy here with this exhibition. I like this film we just saw because it gives us a glimpse on your artistic practice, Helene, but it also gives us a glimpse of the fragile balance between nature and humans. And we are also showing this film here in the exhibition. And I'm right now in the exhibition space, in the room where we are showing the images from the mine outside Gällivare. But where are you located, Helene?
I'm right now in my studio in Stockholm. That was also, you could also see it in the film. So I'm sitting here by my table with a few samples of my work behind, so I can turn you around. So this is where I am in central Stockholm, and I'm so happy. And I also want to thank you, the Swedish Embassy, and also focus on the story. I'm very happy to be part of the festival. So thank you for having me.
Well, in this film, you take us to the Aitik mine, which is located outside Gällivare, but also to the forest outside in Västmanland. So can you tell us a little bit about the exhibition we have here at House of Sweden that are focusing on the forest and the mine?
Yes, but what we decided to do when we did the exhibition in Washington was to show the part of the Thinking Like a Mountain exhibition that is about Sweden, because it made completely sense to do something that relate to two important Swedish industries, but also when talking about climate change and biodiversity, complicated issues. So there are two parts of the exhibition, and one is the forest and the other one is the bedrock, photographed in Aitik, but also in another mine outside Skellefteå in the north of Sweden. And after having been traveling a lot when I did my previous projects, I thought it was interesting to sort of look into my own backyard and to do something about Sweden. And it's always much more challenging and difficult to do something that is familiar. So that's why I decided to do this. And I started with the forest series in 2014.
So if you take us back to 2014, how did your process look like, your working process?
The thing is that for me, that my process is, if you say photography, is maybe 5% of the process, and 95% is to do research and to think about what I'm going to do and which people I'm going to collaborate, because oftentimes I collaborate with, it could be philosophers, authors, and many other people. So what happened was that I had done my project. I had been traveling a lot. I had been also traveling in the United States, working on the CADSO project. And then I was getting more and more aware about the issues with the climate change. I started to question my own traveling and so on. And that was how I decided I wanted to do something in Sweden. And meanwhile, I heard all the stories from globally of all the wildfires. And I was actually out in the Stockholm archipelago in a kayak when I felt the smoke coming from a wildfire in Westland. Obviously, I knew from television that this wildfire was going on. Västmanland is in central Sweden. And then I said, and it was worrisome. It was a very hot night. It was a summer night in Sweden, but it made me feel anxious. I mean, it was lovely because it was hot, but at the same time, it was something that felt this is not right. It shouldn't be like this. And then I decided to go to Västmanland to do a project on that, because oftentimes also my projects are about invasion. I have done projects before, like the earthworks in Namibia. I have done also projects before about fire, but that was in my childhood home. And many times my work is about when something is invaded or transformed into something else and something uncanny. But when started working on this project in Västmanland, I was also intrigued by, while going there, the production forests, because it was kilometers and hundreds of kilometers of like trees in the same sites, the same age, or also areas completely cut down, clear lodge. So it was so obvious to me how we have turned nature into something completely abstract. So then I decided I want to continue on doing this and working in Sweden, doing something about extractions and also about forestry. So that's how it all started. And I was actually also reading at that time an American ecologist, author and philosopher called Aldo Leopold. And I would just quote him because I think what he says is also could be seen as a point of departure of my work. And Aldo Leopold said, and this was in the early 20th century, we abuse land because we see it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. And what I have experienced is that we have lost this connection and the sense of being part of the natural world, which is obvious also because most of the people nowadays live in cities. I mean, so if you live in a city, you don't care. If you're missing a few birds, you will not even notice it, or you will not see that there are no bees or whatever. So that was the point of departure really for my work. And then I continued working on mining, and also because I had an exhibition in northern Sweden, so I continued with the mines and mining.
So suddenly your artistic work became very personal and very driven from also a wish to change something?
Well, yes, I couldn't say that it was really, I said, oh, now I'm going to do, my work is going to make change, but it was really, it came from within. It was a physical feeling coming that I had to do this, and I wanted to work really on I wanted to do a story. I wanted to focus on the story and the story about my lifetime, because I have experienced also during my lifetime how a notion of wilderness and virgin land has collapsed. So I decided now I want to do something about this right now, although I'm not considering myself, not even now, to be, I mean, there are artists that will clearly say I'm a political artist, and I don't define myself as being that. But on the other hand, you could say that any photograph of a landscape is political. I mean, you take deliberately or not a political standpoint when you in how you choose to show a landscape or to do a photograph of a landscape.
Yeah, because many of your photographs are extremely beautiful, and you can zoom in and you see the small details, and you get a very great overview, but they are beautiful. Do you connect that with your, as you call it, landscape photography, and also in relation with landscape paintings?
Yes, for me, it's very important that my images have this doubleness. So they are, so you will, maybe at first glance, you will be seduced by them. But then at the other hand, you will feel something uncanny, and you will, for me, it's very important, the beauty, or this sort of, the contrasts between the beauty and maybe something going on that is uncanny or frightening, or something that's important for me to have. I'm working with this doubleness in my photography.
Searching for the things that are itching, perhaps, kind of.
Yes, also, but I also look for beauty, and I'm interested in the elements, and yes, I mean that's really important for me to work, and I also work with the history, like classical painting, and I've been looking at, because I also have a background, because I've studied art history and film, and that has also had a great impact on my work, I think. So, for instance, while working in this huge, large-scale open pit mine up in Norrbotten, I'm working in the morning or in the evening to have the most beautiful light, and evening to have a rococo sky. I mean, together with this subject. I mean, that's interesting for me to always look for this doubleness, or yes, I don't know if that was an answer to your question.
I think it's very interesting. But as I understand you, this series with from the forest, from Västmanland, that's an ongoing project. You're going back there?
Yes, that's actually an ongoing project. And I was there now, just a few weeks ago, because where the fire occurred, it has been turned into a nature reserve. So I'm also following up what will happen when when sort of the forest recovers after the fire. And also in Sweden, like everywhere, I mean, wildfires are a natural process, and it's something that has always happened. But the thing that is happening right now globally, it's the scale, and that's really frightening. What's going on? I mean, that's going on everywhere, not least in California, for example, or in the Arctic, in Siberia, but also in Sweden. And that's also something that is important in my work, especially in the Bedrock series, with the photographs from the mines. It's a scale, because I mean, we have always extracted things from nature, but we have been, with engineering, we have been so skilled, and that the scale that frightens me. I mean, when you look into the large copper mine and the scale and how the machines, I mean, that's really frightening. And everything today is about, many things are about scale, and I have tried to also show that in my photographs, and that's also why I show them in large formats. And I worked with 8x10, which is an analog technique, which also makes you see all the tiny details. So if you look at these photographs from ITIC, you can go in and you can see maybe a person from 300 meters, which is quite special about this technique, I think.
Yeah, and I understand also that when the extraction of the copper in Aitik eventually comes to an end, the mine will turn into one of Europe's biggest or deepest lakes.
Yes,
actually. So that's a clear sign that human sand is changing the landscape that we are in.
Yes, but we have done this in Sweden since the 11th century. So if you go to central Sweden, it's called Bergslagen, it will be like a Swiss cheese. I mean, there are holes everywhere. So I'm also interested in this history, and mining has been so important for the prosperity of Sweden. So it's also interesting to show this in the Swedish Embassy, obviously.
I have to echo what you say about this going close to zoom in your images, and then to get also to zoom out, because they are extremely detailed. And we saw also in the film the camera that you're using, because that is your camera that you're working with.
That's one of my cameras. That's the smaller of the analog cameras. Since it is a photo festival, I will just mention this, that when doing the photographs from ITIC that are part of the exhibition, I have used an 8x10, an analog camera, which is a bigger analog camera than the 4x5, but the first I've done with a smaller, but also an analog camera.
In spring last year, I went to an exhibition in Stockholm. It was an outdoor exhibition because of the pandemic, and it was called Silent Spring. That was inspired by the American scientist Rachel Carson. And you took part in that exhibition. It was an exhibition with artists that, from my point of view anyhow, not only wanted to reflect on the climate crisis, but it felt like the artists also had a mission somehow to influence our perception or our values. Would you agree on that?
Yes, absolutely. And it was quite spontaneous. We were a group of artists, and all exhibitions were, I mean, obviously we could not come through, and we didn't know what to do. You couldn't do anything inside. So we said, why don't we do something outside instead? And then it's a part of Stockholm called Djurgården, and it's actually a nature reserve. So we did a project there, and working on this theme, and also inspired by Greta Thunberg and Fridays for Future. So we all did something on this subject, and it was really appreciated, and so many people came. I think maybe because also all other institutions were closed, but it was really appreciated. And I decided to do a sound installation, which is also now in Washington, which I think is really beautiful.
We are very pleased to have your sound installation called The Messenger outside House of Sweden. So you can actually hear this sound piece the day through. Alexandra, in the technique room here at the Embassy of Sweden, can we listen to the Messenger? That would be lovely. So, Helene, what is it that we hear?
It's a white-backed woodpecker, who is a threatened species because of Swedish forestry and how it's conducted. So I just wanted to point at this, also since it's also with the theme I'm working with the forest and forestry, and the problems of diminishing all the birds disappearing and so on. And it was when it was in the exhibition, it's obviously a sound installation, but it was with a movement detector. So when people were moving close, the start sounded, and it's just a reminder what's going on worldwide with the loss of species. So yeah.
It's really annoying sound, actually.
I'm sorry.
When you're outside, but we're very happy that we have it here at House of Sweden. You're referring to biodiversity. You are referring to the Swedish two biggest industries, the forest industry and also the minery. I wonder, what was your first relationship? When did you first met the mines in Sweden? What was the situation?
No, but the first time was I had an exhibition at Skellefteå Konsthall, and I was there, and I asked, are there any mines around? And they said, well, there is one like 100 kilometers from here, which is nothing in that part of Sweden. Yeah. So I said, okay, I'll go there. And then it turned out to be, and I'm living in Stockholm part-time in the archipelago, but I'm a city person. So I had no idea that we had gold mines in Sweden, and also it was owned by a Canadian company. And I found that really interesting. I mean, I didn't know we had gold mines, but it's also how the colonization today is run by companies, not so, I mean, also countries, obviously, but also companies that can go over. And we have this special law in Sweden that makes it possible for any company to come and try to prospect for mining. And I think also mining is really interesting today with the change from fossil fuels, because we will need mines. In order for the batteries for the cars, we will need lithium and cobalt and all this. This is like, it's the north of Sweden is bustling with all these things going on. Anyway, I had the opportunity to go to this mine and also to witness how the explosions, because that's how they obviously go further in the mine. So I was there, and that was the first mine I saw and visited. I had also previously seen historical mines, water-filled mines, I mean, from maybe the 15th century or 17th century and so on. And then after that, I decided to go to Aitik, which is a huge copper mine further north. But the first mine I visited was outside Skellefteå, Sweden.
And that is also something you're coming back to, the mines. You will continue?
Yes, actually, I'm during the pandemic, I have continued working with these two topics. I mean, both the mines and the forest, but I'm also doing historical mines. So yes, I'm continuing working on that in Sweden.
In the autumn, we had a virtual opening of the exhibition, and afterwards we got some media attention, and there was some interesting headlines that was dealing with the question how an embassy can show photos that are also critical to the largest industries in Sweden in this case. What does it mean to you that the embassy is showing this exhibition?
Well, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's bold of the Swedish Embassy to do so, because I mean, the embassy is sort of a way of doing PR for a country. I mean, if you see it traditionally, and then you say, oh, this is counterproductive. How do they dare to do something that is self-critical? But if you think one step further, I think it's really to be ahead of things. And I think it's really interesting that an embassy does a thing like this, because this is exactly what we need nowadays. We have to be self-critical. We have to do things. And I think, I mean, all these small steps together can lead to something, can lead to change finally. So I'm so proud and also happy and also proud of the embassy to do this kind of exhibition, and also to raise these questions, and also to have seminars and discussions and so on. And I think this is really what we need right now.
We have to join forces to
yes,
these very critical issues in society right now. Yes, very much. I think we have some questions from the audience that are listening in. Alexandra, should we take some questions?
Yes, we have one here in the chat about why you named the exhibition Dreamland. And if you could talk a little bit about what that title means to you.
No, because first of all, when Helene and I was discussing, because it's a part of the bigger exhibition, Thinking Like a Mountain, and then we decided, okay, we're going to do something that is it's only about Sweden. And I don't know, but we in Sweden, I think we have very high ideas about ourselves, and we consider ourselves sometimes being front runners when it comes to sustainability and maybe other questions. So the title is just a bit ironic, actually. I'm not an ironic person, but also I think it was because it is a self-critical, and also in this context of showing it at the embassy, I found it interesting. I found it to be an interesting title.
And then we have one more here in the Q&A about more about the photographic process. A question that is, do you process your negatives by your own? And how important is it for you to have control over the whole creative process from idea until the print and exhibition?
Oh, the first question is, no, I don't develop my films myself. I used to do that. I'm old enough to have experienced how to also mix all the chemicals, but that was in black and white. And I have processed color photography, but that was a long time ago. So the process is, first of all, a lot of my time goes to research. I mean, maybe 80% or something like that, also to prepare for the trips, because it's very costly to do these trips, and also the material for the film and so on is costly. And then I also read a lot before I go, and then I have the film, and then afterwards I have it developed in Sweden, and then I scan it in a RAM scanner, and then I work on them in my computer, and then I do not C prints. I used to do that, but I do inkjet prints. That's how the process goes. But also, when working with a large format camera, a lot of the work is done before, because when you have a digital camera, you have a lot of work afterwards. First of choosing, because you will have click, click, click. But when you do with the analog camera, you go, it's very slow, it's ceremonious before you do the actual shoot. So you maybe only have 4 negatives, and then I only develop 1 negatives, maybe, because also it's costly to develop the negatives. So, well, that's about the process. And then also, since I do them in large formats, I don't do them in here in my studio. I do them smaller, and then I go to studio to do them in the large sizes they are. But it's a long process, really. It's it's really a long process to do that. I don't know if that was a good or sufficient answer to your question.
But then you really understand that you said before that 5% of your work is actually taking the photos, and the rest.
Or I think less.
Yeah, it's a lot of research, not just the contemporary situations, but also the historical perspective of the climate changes.
Yes. Now I know one question I didn't answer. If it's important for me to have full control of the whole process, the answer is yes. It's very important. I am a control freak, maybe a bit less now than I used to be, but it's really important for me. And also with my books, because the books are very important for me, and I have produced several books. And that's another format and another thing to do. And I'm really interested in the books as an object, but also I think it's a very important and interesting way to show your work. And you can also, you can send it all over the world. So I love to do these books, and I'm very interested in the whole process of producing books, but also when it comes to my photography, I'm also obviously how they are shown, what the frames look like, and everything. Yes, it's very important to me to be in control. So now I have answered, I think, everything.
Passion for the exhibition, for Dreamland, that you reach that from a personal standpoint, personal perspective. And the question is, if you find that your art has sort of developed in tandem with your political views on climate crisis or what needs to be done. And then the second one, which I think is related, is what role do you think that artists have or should have in highlighting societal issues?
Okay. Well, I don't think art or artists should do anything. Do you see what I mean? Or, you don't have, as an artist, you're free to do whatever you wish to do. So I cannot say what artists should do, but for my part, I have been. It was just like a natural process, and then I felt also. I think I have definitely been inspired by the news, by documentaries, by what's going on in the contemporary society, and also the things that I have understood during my lifetime. I didn't know about those things. I mean, like very few people did, maybe only 15 years ago, or, you know. So I think maybe also, maybe it could be so that artists are sensitive, or many artists have been working with those issues lately, and I think it's absolutely logic for me that artists could be sensitive for these issues, like writers, like philosophers, like so many. I mean, it's something really acute going on. It's something I mean, how could you not react to this? But it's not, I don't know what my next project will be, or what it will. Maybe I will do something else. I don't know right now, but this I had to do. It was just something I felt I had to do.
Some artists in Sweden are engaged in Friday for Future. There is great work. What are you engaged in the Friday for Future?
Well, I sympathize with them. I'm not really. I go there sometimes, but I couldn't say that I'm really part of that. But I work and I collaborate, and all those artists. I mean, many of those artists are my friends, and some of them are also working with these issues. So, yeah.
Yeah. Alexandra?
Yeah, we have one more here that asked, when you spend a lot of time looking closely at a site, whether the forest fire or a mine, do you discover things that surprise you? Do you sometimes find that nature is fighting back?
I don't think that nature is fighting, like actively fighting, because it's something, there are processes going on, but I'm interested in when something goes off kilter, or with Kudzu project, that was a previous project that I shot in the United States. I mean, from the first view, you could say, oh, it's nature fighting back, you know, with a Kudzu plant, but it's not, because the Kudzu has been planted there by men, so it's part of an infrastructure process. But then things start to unfold, and we humans lose control. And I think we are so obsessed with having control of everything. So we love to see these trees in straight rows, or many of us though, because it gives us a sense of control, and that everything is sort of anthropocentric. But I think deep within us humans, we know we don't have control. We can't control the atmosphere. We have started processes that we have lost. But I mean, it's not like the atmosphere, because it has so much carbon dioxide, are fighting us. It's just things happening, unrolling, and it's processes that in our times that we have created ourselves.
Great, we have some more questions here. One is, your photographs are specific and beautiful. What is your creative process for choosing a topic or arriving at the final photo?
Well, that could be many things. I mean, because people ask me what I'm inspired of, and I can be inspired of reading a philosopher from the 18th century, or seeing a documentary, or even, you know, listening to the news, or so it could be many different things that would inspire me. So I can't really, it's not one specific things. Obviously also other earlier artists' work, the history of art, but I think also that film, because I studied film when I was young, and I think that was very important for me too, and how that has inspired me a lot in my work. So many things, many different things.
How and in what ways do you feel like your direct witnessing this environmental shift influenced or improved your work and the way that you photograph? So by being there, seeing when it happens.
That was a difficult question to answer. I don't know really if it's up to me to answer that question, but I can say that it has been challenging to do this. I mean, both the forest project and the mines, because I have worked with sites that are, and also in Iceland when I was working on Thinking Like a Mountain. So I have worked with the disturbances or scars, for example, the pipelines in Iceland or the production forest in Sweden. But I have also been interested in the image. I mean, I also want to do something new with landscape photography and something else. So I have tried to do something to develop my photography and also to challenge myself when working with those topics.
So is there any more question, or shall we wrap up? What do you think?
I think we maybe have time for one or two more. So one here is, if there's one or two messages that you want this exhibition to tell the next generation of leaders and artists, what would those messages be?
I think it's actually Aldo Leopold's words that we have, I think that we have lost our sense of belonging, and that we don't use nature just as a commodity, that we try to find again that we are part of a system with all other living species, and that we have to find our way back to that, and also doing things in a smaller scale, because we will ruin not only other living species, I mean also ourselves in the end. So maybe that would be my words.
And we have a question, someone that had a reaction to the video that asked, the doubleness of focusing on a blemish or a scar caused by human activity on an otherwise beautiful landscape is fascinating to me. The examples in the opening film seem to show one single man-made scar. Do you try to have just one, or do you also try to show multiple blemishes or problems?
No, I don't know. That was just a question of how to create an interesting image. I mean, I focused. I thought it was more interesting to do the photograph the way I did, and also it was in that case with the pipelines of Iceland. It was a question of composition. Yeah.
I think to wrap up, the good last question is to ask about your plans for the future. What projects will you be working on next? And if you're coming back to the United States?
Oh yes, I would love to. We will see what happens with that. I don't have a project in the United States planned right now. But I'm continuing my work in Sweden. I hope to do a book on that. So I'm continuing working with the forest and the mines, but also the historical mines of Sweden. So that's my next project.
And we are very much looking forward to have you here in the autumn. We hope that you will be able to travel here and that we can meet you directly in the exhibition. That would be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I think we should wrap up. So I really need to thank you, Helene, for joining us today to talk about your incredible work. We're so happy that you're here exhibiting here at House of Sweden. And thank you, Joe, and Focus on the Story for the collaboration. For those of you that are listening and are located in the Washington, D.C. area, you can come and see Dreamland here in person. We are open on Saturday, Sunday between noon and 5 o'clock. And you don't want to miss the projection on House of Sweden with Helene's photographers that will be on the whole month. And we recommend you, of course, to come after sunset. It's a beautiful projection outside, and also listen to The Messenger. I really hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and thank you very much for listening in.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Helene, also.
Thank you, everyone. And we're actually going to wrap up today's conversation by showing a slideshow of Helene Schmitz photos from the exhibition Dreamland. And as Helen mentioned, if you are based in Washington, you can come in and view the exhibition live at House of Sweden. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.